Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and on this channel, I answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answer they need from an employment attorney. But not today. Not today, because this is a quick extra video today for a special case. This is primarily directed at folks in New York City, but it is valid for anywhere that there are rolling blackouts or power limitations on office space. Specifically, here's what's going on in New York. I've spoken about it in other videos, but I'm going to reiterate it here because it's relevant to this video specifically. Excuse me, I have a doctor's appointment for that cough Thursday. Anyways, New York City and Con Edison, the electricity authority here in New York, which is a quasi-governmental entity, are holding what's called a curtailment today. It begins at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and that is right now, this very moment it is beginning. And what they're going to do is deprive most office buildings, apparently not all office buildings. There's a few office buildings who might be wealthy enough to be free of this. But most of the office buildings in New York City are not going to be allowed to run their AC or their cooling tower. Now, I don't fully understand the difference between air conditioning and a cooling tower. Those might be the same thing, but the language that was used to me seemed to differentiate them, so I'm differentiating them. I'm not a building engineer. I don't understand boilers or cooling towers. My HVAC certification is, as they say, in the mail, or never coming at all. But the upshot is that, listen, it's 1 p.m. It is... let's see here. It is 93 degrees out. Forecasted to hit. My goodness, 96 degrees today. And the AC just turned off. Now, it is 77 degrees in this office right now because this is a giant greenhouse. As you can kind of see, the entire building is a giant greenhouse. It is 60 plus floors of greenhouse. It's going to heat up super quick. Is 77 degrees safe and good for me to work in? Yeah, of course. It's not that bad. Listen, would I prefer it be 72 degrees? 68 degrees? 54 degrees? Yeah, all those temperatures sound better to me than 77, but obviously I'm fine at 77, right? Like, am I a little shiny? Yeah, but I'm fine. Notably, however, I don't have a disability that makes me heat sensitive, of which there are literally hundreds. And all of the employers in New York City, essentially, all of them subject to this curtailment, who have people working in the office, now need to be mindful that there are people with heat-sensitive disabilities who will be impacted by this curtailment. Now, it is not the business owner's fault that Con Edison and New York State and New York City couldn't plan to provide the sufficient amount of infrastructure and electricity for their population and their business environment, right? That's not the employer's fault. But that is irrelevant because the upshot is the business owner is now providing a working environment that is hotter. And if it is hot enough to trigger someone's heat-sensitive disability, that person will need an accommodation. Now, the reality situation is that on this curtailment, I believe I had 24 hours notice. It's possible other buildings had more notice and my building was just slow to tell me. I don't know. But as a business owner who has office space here in New York, I got exactly, I think, 25 hours notice on the dot. That's silly because none of our employees could have probably gotten to their doctor and gotten a letter seeking accommodation quickly enough to get an accommodation for this heat-sensitive environment, this high-heat office day, right? So as a business owner out there, what you need to be doing is if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have a heat-sensitive disability, I need accommodation, you have to say, in my opinion, yes. Best practice is, yes, we grant you the accommodation. Backfill it with the paperwork as required. Good. Best practice is you did the right thing. Now, speaking to the employees out there, many employers are not going to know that. They're not going to do that. So one, if you want to be cool about things, you can be like, well, here's a video from a guy who's an employment attorney, me, this guy, And he says this is a real thing under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the New York State Human Rights Law, the New York City Human Rights Law. And sure, he's got a wicked cough, but he's also got a point. So let's do the right thing here, and I'll be back in tomorrow when the AC is on. Although, realistically, the AC may not be back on tomorrow. Like, this curtailment could go on. The fact of the matter is, when it reaches a certain temperature here in New York City, they simply don't have enough electricity, and their old policy of depriving the neighborhoods filled with people of color of electricity is not as socially acceptable now, or just something they're not getting away with to the same extent that they once did. So now they're going to do office buildings. Which, listen, much rather the office buildings than neighborhoods based on race. Trust me, much preferred, in my opinion. But the reality is, like, listen, I got a friend, a buddy's wife, who's got a major deal going down in New York City, like this week, right now. She flew in from San Fran. They flew in people from all over the world, hundreds of millions in the balance, right? They can't find a building with AC. They literally, I mean, like, they flew people from all over the world to come here to do business, and then here decided, we're not going to do that anymore. We just don't provide AC anymore. That sucks. That's horrific. They're going to end up, I think, like, renting hotel rooms to do business in, because the players in that scenario are going to be like, yeah, I am worth way too much to deal with sweating while I negotiate a deal for hundreds of millions of dollars. This feels like a tactic, right? It feels like you're trying to put pressure on me, make me uncomfortable. It's not going to happen, right? So that's just stuff like that is going down all around New York City right now. That's unfortunate because New York City is going to lose a lot of revenue because, listen, it's not going to be a reliable place to do business in the summer. The people of New York City know that. Nobody who can afford not to stays in New York City in the summer. It's a ghost town, right? Even the restaurants will tell you. I have a buddy who owns a French steakhouse. But buddy's a strong word. I have an acquaintance who owns a French steakhouse. And he would tell me flat out, like, listen, if you can break even in the summer months in New York City as a restaurant, you're doing golden. You make all your money in the winter, fall, winter, spring, when people are actually in New York, and all your best customers are gone. They're in the Hamptons. They're traveling the world. They're somewhere nicer than New York City. New York City is not a nice place in the summer. The subway is easily 100 degrees. It's humid. It's a swamp. It's a super hot swamp. And the buildings, heat up, and all the concrete heats up, and it just radiates heat. Even at night, it's not that nice. So it's already a ghost town in the summer, but now it's a ghost town where you can't even really trust it to do business because they're going to turn the AC off on you. It's a nightmare. But I digress. If you are an employee with a disability that makes you heat sensitive, get everything in writing. Get your demand for an accommodation in immediately. Do the right thing. Like, get it in immediately. Don't spring it on your employer. The minute you hear a curtailment's coming, or now that you know curtailments are generally coming, get in your intermittent accommodation for curtailment days, right? When the heat, and specify, like, listen, if the temperature gets over 78, I gotta bounce. I gotta go. I gotta go home. I gotta go to somewhere with AC. You can either get me AC or you can get me out of here. There might be other options. Maybe you could get like a personal fan. I don't know. I'm not your doctor. I'm not privy to your disability. But like, really get what you need. Do not engage in half measures that put you at risk, that are going to make you do your job less effectively, because that's just going to get you in trouble. Really, really push for what you actually need in the situation. That's key. And document. Keep a log of all your conversations that are verbal. Keep all the written communications that go back and forth on this. Get what you need from your doctor. Do everything right. We have videos on the channel about how to seek accommodations and how to go about that. Follow that process, but expedite it, because the last thing we need is to hear about you were seeking an accommodation, but like you passed out at your desk, or you were seeking accommodation, but the heat exacerbated an ongoing condition and you have an acute attack now, or whatever it is, right? We don't need that. We don't want that for you. We want you to be safe, happy, healthy. If your employer is giving you the proverbial business, if they're giving you a hard time about it, do call an employment attorney. I'm making this video because we started getting calls out of nowhere, and I hadn't thought about this, and I didn't really understand I guess, how hot it was going to be. Like it's 78 in here now. I can see the thermometer, and the curtailment is 9 minutes old, right? I didn't grasp how bad it was. I know we had curtailments last year, but they seemed a little less extreme to me. Maybe they weren't. Maybe I'm just remembering things with rosy glasses. I don't know. But this one seems like it's going to be problematic. And so you got to be on top of it. You're going to have to get your accommodations in place. Do it based on, like, if the temperature in the office gets over X, which is whatever you and your doctor decide together, I need these things from you, my employer. And consider the employment attorneys of New York at your disposal. And listen, if you're having rolling blackouts or you're in a hot workspace somewhere else in the country and you need an accommodation, get the accommodation. If you have a disability and your doctor says you're heat sensitive because of your disability and your disability is protected by the ADA, then, my friend, get your accommodation. Why not? Why suffer? Why put your health at risk? Frankly, none of us earn enough to put our health at risk, right? I mean, I guess some of us do. There's people who get paid to do that kind of job. There's the scaffolding guys, super high up, making $170 an hour, and I respect that. And you could argue perhaps they're being compensated for some of the risks they're taking, braving the elements, braving the heights, all the things they're dealing with, all their specialized knowledge and talent and skill and experience, right? Perhaps they're being properly compensated. But odds are you're not. If you're working in an office, you're probably not being paid to work in 85, 95 degree heat. It's probably not something that was thought about when your compensation was arrived at. They probably instead said, hey, you're working in an office. Things are pretty good. It's a pretty easy life. So we're not going to pay you as much, right? And that's not going to fly. So get your accommodations. If you have a disability, don't fake a disability. Like, nobody, I will think less of you if you do that. But if you have a real disability and you're really heat sensitive, get your accommodation. And if you don't have a disability and you're just a New Yorker living through this curtailment, do what everybody else is doing. Everybody is going, like, out to play tennis, to play golf. Everybody's just leaving work. The bars are going to be full. Everybody I know is making, like, parties to go to a bar that actually has AC. Some of the bars have advertised that they're still going to keep their AC some way, somehow. I don't know. And people are booking, like, rooms and party rooms and stuff like that to, like, get AC, and they're just leaving work. So essentially there's, like, a work stoppage, like an unofficial work stoppage in New York now because of the curtailment, which is already insane because this is a Wednesday, which is the biggest work day of the week in New York now, because most employment in New York is at least partially work from home now. There's not a lot of jobs that were able to force their employees to be full-time in office. Even New York City itself has failed to do that. They've been forced to cave and allow their employees, like, a hybrid remote work situation. So generally speaking, people often try to work a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. In New York City, you can tell by the hotel prices, because the hotel prices on, like, a weekend are like $250. And the hotel prices on, like, a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night are like $750. So you can tell that everybody's, like, coming into the city to work and then returning to whatever good place they live in when they don't have to be in the office. And that's the vibe in New York now. So this is the biggest workday of the week, statistically speaking, based on the data provided by New York. And everybody's just not going to be working. So the businesses of New York City are going to be losing, I would assume, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars with this work stoppage. And it's just because the state, local government, and the quasi-governmental body that is Con Edison didn't plan correctly, didn't build the infrastructure, didn't spend the money, didn't act in a responsible fashion as stewards of our utilities, and no one's going to hold them accountable because this is New York and it's corrupt and it's kind of like a one-party state. So you're just going to have to live with it. If you do business in New York, sometimes you're just not going to have AC and your employees are all going to leave and you're just going to lose money. That's the cost of doing business in New York, along with the high taxes and the corruption and the rats and the subway that never works. But the food's good. So, well, food's getting better again. Food is actually really bad for a couple of years in New York and super expensive, but it is now super expensive and getting better. So that's nice. That's positive. I certainly think that's a good thing for New York. Get your accommodations. If this video was helpful, like, subscribe, comment down below, share the channel so it may grow. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there. Stay cool.